What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to one of my good friends. He is a YouTube content creator in the sector of lucha libre and pro wrestling, as well as a talented producer. He's the one and only Jass Beats. Jazz, what's up, my man?
What's up, Adam? It's good to be here today. I know I apologize to all the fans because we said at 10 a.m., but Adam posted 10 p.m. It was his fault. I apologize, but we're now here and we're open to any questions. And any questions do you have pro wrestling wise and anything you want to ask me, feel free to ask me.
Absolutely. Now, my goodness, first and foremost, I kind of rag on Excalibur on what's it, AEW for wearing a mask. I'm not a fan of his mask, but yours looks pretty dang glorious. I mean the gold over to undertones with the black mask, it just stands out. I mean total oro, you know. So
Mhm.
how did the design of the masks come about?
Well, the design came about when we developed. Shout out to my homeboy Lou Dog that edits my videos and that I also do music with. When we developed the YouTube channel, I eventually just wanted to develop the YouTube channel to promote my music, because Lou Dog is the type of person that he's very stubborn, and he would tell me, you know what? Let me make a correction. It's Hass Beats. He's like, you know what, Hass Beats? You're very good. You have an ear for music. He's like, I could help you because I'm very technical with music software, with learning how to play an instrument because I cannot play an instrument because I don't have finger dexterity due to the fact that I have cerebral palsy. So when we developed the YouTube channel back in 2018, I didn't want to show my face because I was like, what if the YouTube channel doesn't do good? What if it fails? So I wanted to be different from other YouTubers. Not to disrespect any YouTubers. Do your thing, however you want to do it. So I wanted to be different. So I started thinking, Kiss from the rock band Kiss wears makeup. Insane Clown Posse wears makeup. And due to the fact that I have Mexican descent in me, I'm like, why don't I be the one with a lucha libre mask, but add my own little twist to it? And I went all over LA looking for a designer mask, looking for people. Sorry, I coughed. It's normal. I'm nervous, but looking for somebody to design this. And I called you. I don't know if you remember.
Dang, that's amazing. Now, don't be nervous because we're all friends here. But Jesse Velasquez says I like the mask. Yeah,
Thank you.
I do too, man. And shout out to Jesse, a MMA
Shout out.
champ here in Southern California. But my goodness, especially right now where things are kind of weird. 2020 has been weird. I mean, from March on for pretty much all of us, right?
Mhm.
But one thing that is absolutely cool about you is different circumstances, people play the cards as they may, right?
Yeah.
And you having cerebral palsy, we know that Jim Ross, Hall of Fame, announcer, one of my heroes, he essentially had Bell's palsy, and you have cerebral palsy, and you could have just been like, you know let the cards kind of play out as they may, right? But you did that, and you literally made it your superpower. And you're like, how can I give back to the things have that I like? How can I contribute to things that I dig? And music as well as pro wrestling. Those are two things that you dig, and you found a way to creatively come and show the best of it, and then also show the best of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom always encouraged me to get out there. Do not be afraid to try new things. And My mom and my dad are my biggest inspiration. You know, my mom has always been a warrior. My mom left her house when she was like 14 years old just to reach a dream. And my dad the same way. When he was 20 years old, he came to this country. I mean, we're not wealthy, we're not rich, but we live very comfortably. And yeah, that's where I get the I guess the fighting spirit from.
I love it. I love it. I mean, my mom did similar, coming from Fiji in her early 20s, and I'm the son of a immigrant, and I guess they call it what, the American descendant of slaves. My dad, American descendant of slaves. My mom being, from Fiji, and I've kind of got that. But it's from that you kind of stand on the sacrifices of what they've done and try to create a path for yourself. And I think it's absolutely great. Not only that you have their supports, but you literally came from a guerrero and a guerrera, right? And and for those who don't speak Spanish, I mean that's a warrior, both male and female, and you rise on the shoulders of their sacrifices.
And like you said earlier, we had to play the cards to our best ability. I mean, I was told when I was born that I was gonna that I was gonna die young. I was not even gonna make it to the past of the age of 30, and look where I'm at now. Doctors were wrong.
Yep, they're wrong every day. They're right in some instances, and they're wrong with some instances, and they were absolutely wrong about you and your what they thought at the time. Were your prospects in life. And Jesse Velasquez says, respect the grind, viva la raza. Just saying, hell yes. And Jesse himself is part part Mexican and part Japanese, so it's cool. We're all the sum of the parts of our parents, and that makes us different. That makes us unique. But speaking of different and unique, I mean, pro wrestling, lucha libre, and music, right? So, I mean, that's almost like my dad. My dad was a musician, right? And then I have been essentially pretty much like, I guess we could say, like, balls deep into everything pro wrestling and combat sports from when I was young. So, when was
Mhm.
it that you discovered combat sports, my man?
Maybe I would like to say like at the age of 4 or 5 years old, because my mom is a huge wrestling fan. My mom used to watch the Hart Foundation, Macho Man Randy Savage, uh, the Ultimate Warrior, all those big guys from the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. My mom would watch them on TV. So being a little 5-year-old, I remember I would watch 4 or 5 year old. I would see these guys on TV, and I would be like, "What the heck is this?" Macho Man with like, "Oh yeah," the way that he can never get off character, even in public. And then, the Ultimate Warrior, the way that he would cut his promos, you would not understand anything he would say, but he would have you invested. God rest his soul, by the way. And that's how I got involved in the pro wrestling world, boxing world, MMA world. Yeah.
That's tremendous, and that was sort of some of what your mom was watching was some of the things that I was watching, which I've aged myself absolutely horribly. But Paul Perez of the main event of Paul Perez, another YouTube and Instagram content creator himself, and go check him out on the main event with Paul Perez with Boko Gray on both YouTube and Instagram. You can thank me later because there's some of the funness things that I consume on Instagram and YouTube. So shout out to Paul Perez, and he says content creator, lucha libre, and music. Dang, I want to watch, but I'm on the clock. Shh, we won't tell anyone. Um, Gotta work, but keep the info sharing. So yeah, again, check out Jass Beats on YouTube, and then Paul Perez with Beto Gray. on YouTube. This is a convergence of kind of, I guess, creative talent, right? Creative talent.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of you know, obviously, when you're there are things that your parents like, right? That those may not be the things that you like, right? So you might have seen your mom watching wrestling and may or may not have taken to it, right? And she had her favorites, but who are some of your favorites when you were coming up as a young whippersnapper?
I always like to say that the Randy Savage, the Hulk Hogan's, the all the legends that were big in the '90s. Because I was born in 1990, so do the math. I don't like to reveal my age because I'm a mask man. So do the math. You can do the math, guys, and just leave it at that. But yeah, the Hulk Hogan's, the Randy Savages, the Hart Foundation, the Legend of Doom. When I used to hear that little intro, oh, what a rush! I would be like, oh shit, excuse my language. Oh shit, it's an ass kicking time. They don't play. And when I would hear the little intro, the little, you know what I mean? It was like, what the heck is this? These were larger than life. And then as I got old, as I started growing up, I started watching Mexican lucha libre. Because my mom would watch it too. The El Hijo del Santo, Blue Demon. So she started telling me about all these wrestlers that were sons of these, that were fathers to these guys. And also, I have not a lot of people know this, but you know this. You know me personally. I have an uncle that's a professional wrestler in Mexico. He goes by the name Tomix Jr. So yeah. So
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's tremendous, and that's kind of the path that I took as well, right? Where like I remember it was actually Randy Savage versus Bret Hart was the first combat sports anything that I'd ever seen, right? So I kind of followed those two, right? Bret and Macho Man, right?
hmm
I kind of followed what they were doing and who they were facing and everything like that. And then, later on, I kind of had it ingrained that some of the best storytelling that ever happened in a ring and then later a cage. So, when I got a little bit older and, a guy named Iron Mike Tyson, I mean, I think I remember a young kid watching Tyson on like ESPN Friday Night Fights when, I mean, ESPN was still a fledgling network. And my goodness, I mean, Tyson was knocking out dudes in headgear. And I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, Bret Hart, Randy Savage, Tyson, got it. And then, like, again, I mean, shout out to him because he just fought, which is amazing. But Julio Cesar Chavez, man, when Chavez Sr. used to fight, I remember being in my apartment building in the Bay Area, and literally the whole apartment. Somebody would bring out whoever had the biggest TV. They'd bring out the TV, hook it to extension cords, we'd barbecue and all that jazz. And I mean, he would just. I mean, that was it. So I was just like, again, anything in a ring or a cage, that was my deal, man. So I mean, I kind of researched back, right? So I had Randy Savage and Bret Hart respectively, and then when I would turn the dial to the Spanish language station, and I would see Lucha Libre, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, and then that coupled with obviously Mike Tenay he was in WCW as an announcer, and he would just spout out random facts, and I was just like, man, I want to be as smart as that guy, you know. And then he would, talk about CMLL or AAA and whatever, and I'd be like, okay, and then I would figure out the times and turn the dial and watch, some of the best lucha libre this side of anywhere.
I always tell people, you can quote me if I'm wrong. We got pretty lucky because we got to see Julio Cesar Chavez fight. I remember being from due to the fact that I'm Mexican descent, I remember when that guy used to fight, even when Tyson used to fight, when those guys used to fight, they would gather a whole entire city, not even a whole entire city, a whole entire country. Chavez will gather a whole entire country. The whole entire country of Mexico would just want to watch that guy. Everybody would stop what they were doing to watch that guy. I remember that because I watched him too coming up. And for being the age he is and still be boxing, it's like, what the heck? I want to be like him one day, you know?
Yeah, and I mean he looked dang good. I mean, he's still. I mean, I can't be. I'm pretty partial when it comes to Chavez Senior because like that dude was a god. You know, I will say, you know, that was the first time that I saw anybody as a kid, you know, and they fully represented like their country and an immigrant story. And I mean, the way that he would fight. I mean, one of the reasons why I think Triple G, you know, has kind of become this like larger than life figure in the world of not just boxing, but specifically with Mexican fight fans, is because he's absolutely, absolutely it fights like Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., even more so than Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
I agree.
Absolutely. Now, Fernando Lepe wants to know, are you creating music and theme entrances for pro wrestlers? And I know Fernando just is coming off the very first Roy Engelbright Promotions Lucha Libre show that happened, I believe it was last week. And I know he's got wrestlers in his stable, so he wants to know if you you create entrances for wrestlers.
I haven't produced music in a while, but I mean, if they want something from me, they can get in contact with me, and then I can get in contact with my homeboy Lou Dog, and we could set up something. Let's see what we can come up with. It's all in the air right now. I mean, mostly right now I'm focused on getting these interviews because my interviews barely started 6 months ago. So yeah, I only
That's
have
yeah,
two
no, no,
videos up
absolutely.
on YouTube. Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I only have two videos up on YouTube right now, but more are coming. So go subscribe and see what's gonna be new. I cannot reveal much because my partner Lou Dog is like, keep it on the low for right now. They have to wait and see.
No, but I mean, you say there too, but I mean, in terms of the content and production, I mean, they are kind of top notch. You know, I'm a fan. I'm subscribed, and again, you guys should too. But I mean, sometimes it's not about quantity; it's about quality. You know, and if you're making the quality content that people would like, you could only hope that they could be coming back for more.
Yeah, that's what we want. And at the end of the day, we want to create something unique and different. I want to give people an aspect of wrestlers that they don't see. So
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. And Jesse Velasquez, to the ilk of Chavez Senior and Tyson, he says, "Big facts. You guys grew up with the biggest characters in combat sports, and they were before my time. I still look up to Chavez Senior and Tyson, but I don't think most fighters today can compare." And yeah, it's a weird one, and especially in the instances of boxing, because it's long been said, that you could judge, and you could pretty much take this to account for pro wrestling as well. Not so much MMA, because MMA has gotten apart away from it. But you could always judge how the business overall is doing, right? I don't care if you're a regional promoter or the tippy top, but you could always judge how the business is going and growing by how the heavyweights are doing, right? If people are talking about the heavyweights, chances are they're going to tune in for a light heavyweight, a super welterweight, whatever fight, right? So um, there was a weird time where the Klitschko brothers, right? They were European, they were brothers. You could never get a unified title holder, a unified boxing heavyweight champion, because you know between the both of them, they held all of the titles, right?
Yeah,
And they wouldn't fight each other, so you never
yeah.
got that unification bout. And their style was a no disrespect to them, because obviously, I mean, they are they are who they are, and they've risen to championship level performance and netting gold in their field. But I mean, the style by comparison to like, a Mike Tyson, a Lennox Lewis, um, people that Riddick Bowe, the people that kind of held that division together for so long, they kind of fell by the wayside, and this, especially the fact that they wouldn't fight out of Europe. Like all of the fights were in Europe, so you've got the heavyweight champions that are brothers. They hold up the division. They won't fight anywhere else. So if you're a Mexican fan, they're not fighting there. If you're an American, a Canadian fan, Brazilian fan, they're not coming there. And it's just like, so it kind of killed boxing for a large extent here in North America. I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because I mean they dominated the heavyweight division for a long time. I was like, when would it be the day that we get another heavyweight champion like Tyson or whatever? I miss those days, but like we say in Spanish, en gusto se rompen géneros. Like whatever it's people like this era, people like the old school era. It's an open mind. You could agree or disagree.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. And it's funny, like a lot of like Mexican sayings, especially in 2020. Because I mean, I grew up in England, so I can kind of read and speak a little bit, like me poquito. I mean, mi español es más o menos, right? So, um, with that being said, I can kind of read the between the lines in terms of the memes and everything that are in Spanish, and there's a lot of things that are just like, duh, like everybody should be on that, or even even though he's Puerto Rican, Walter Mercado, that dude in his astrology. That was pro wrestling AF, man. That was his whole presentation and the gowns and everything like that, and he was a linchpin for all things Latin America, and he almost spoke the gospel. But I mean, that was one of the people that I kind of look to, and in terms of like confidence and everything like that. And I was like, man, dude. I mean, if everybody had a little bit of Walter Mercado in them, the sky's the limit. Literally,
Yeah,
it's written in the stars.
uh, I agree.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of lucha libre, right? I mean, what were we mentioned Bret Hart and and Randy Savage amongst others being the the people that you were drawn to, much like your mom, when you were younger and when you first started. But I mean, what were some of the others in the form of lucha libre, specific lucha libre that spoke out to you?
El Santo, the classic El Santo, Blue Demon, Mil Máscaras. Shout out to all of them, by the way. Blue Panther, Blue Panther. Even though he was a heel, the way that he used to interpret that heel, he would have you drawn. Blue Panther. If I miss any names, I'm sorry. Octagon, Psychosis, that goes by Nicho El Millonario now. Damien 666, all those guys that were big in the 90s, like Los Villanos. Uh, the list is long, but if I miss any names, I'm sorry. Los Villanos, Los Dinamita, uh, Los Brazos, Super Porky, and all those guys. And yeah,
No, those are. I mean, and for the most part, a lot of those guys, especially when I was kind of coming up as a, I guess an adolescent and coming into a teenager. And those are, when you mentioned Damien 666 and Vivianos and, you know, uh, uh, yeah, those are guys that made it to WCW. So I mean, it wasn't just regulated to you know the lucha libre of south of the border. No, those are like international stars. Um, those are seminal talent. And I remember just watching like Nitro. I remember watching Nitro in the cruiserweight division, and I was just like, I you know, I didn't, not to say that I didn't like Hulk Hogan, right? But I mean, Hulk Hogan went by the wayside, when there was like, I would even say like, I would even throw Dean Malenko in there, right? Even though he was not as lucha as, whatever, but he brought a different style to all of the lucha stuff. And like, I'll put, Rey Mysterio and Dean Malenko's matches right there with like Warrior and not Warrior. No, Warrior doesn't have good matches. No, but what is it? Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat. Those matches and whatever. You look at those matches that they were having, and they're just as good. And the people like, especially right now during COVID times, and even before, if a particular wrestling promotion didn't have that, you know, that big fan following or live attendance or whatever, you didn't hear the pop. You didn't hear the, they always say about the Road Warrior pop, but it's just like, whatever, right? You look back at
People
those
were
matches and those
yeah,
the mid '90s, mid to late '90s, and you forget what a pop sounds like. And those matches popped. Like, I mean, it was almost like a alien touching down. Like, what is this, and where can we get more of it?
yeah. That's how it was to me. That's how I got turned on to pro wrestling, because, like you said, not to bash on anybody that's in major promotions, but I mean, yeah, these wrestlers would get pops. You would hear the crowd like, even when they heard the little intro, and you would be like, what the hell? People would scream, yell. So fast forward to like what you said, and then yeah. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, going a little bit back a bit, Jesse Velasquez says, in regards to the boxing, they weren't nearly as popular as other heavyweight champs in the regards to the Klitschko brothers. When Joshua beat one of them, it was actually good for boxing. I thought now we've got Wilder, Fury, Joshua, and I mean Andy Ruiz is kind of lurking in the shadows too. So I mean, it's cool. Boxing is back again, right? And Fernando Lepe says, in terms of people he was influenced by, uh, Fu- Fuerza Guerrera, which obviously is the father of Juventud Guerrera. Both of them all-time greats. Rey Mysterio Sr., Octagon, Los Gringos Locos. And again, if you want to go down a fun wormhole of Lucha Libre, watch Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero in in uh, in Mexico as Los Gringos Locos. Oh my God! I mean, their work. I mean, if not for Art Barr unfortunately passing away, they were going to get the call to. I mean, they had already done like ECW, but they were going to get the call to WCW, and I mean, obviously Eddie eventually did, and he essentially went to, I mean, the greatest of heights in winning a WWE championship in his own right as a singles. But I mean, Eddie credited, Art being the, I mean, he was the originator of the frog splash, and he did a weird kind of jackknife with his versus, Eddie and everybody that's come after him kind of doing more of a frog like motion. But I mean, Art Barr's frog splash, my God, he looked like a jackknife. It's just like it was just a thing of brilliance. And Fernando Lopez as Vampiro, Negro Casas, and Norman Smiley. Yeah, it's crazy because I mean, those names that you mentioned there. right? I mean, you can pretty much kind of um, they're kind of like the three corners of what pro wrestling is now, right? Because Vampiro, obviously,
One of
um,
my personal
you know,
favorites, I should say. One of my
yeah, man.
personal
I mean,
favorites.
his stuff as a Vampiro Candanés, in Mexico. I mean, he was a star. Conan was a star. To effects of stardom that I don't think that kids really see today, because I mean, obviously there's so many things, so many influences and influencers, so to speak. But I mean, you know, like how Michael Jackson was kind of like a superstar here, Madonna was a superstar here, or whatever. Conan and Vampiro in Mexico absolutely were. Conan was the Conan Barbaro was
Bárbaro.
the I'm brushing up on my Spanish here, but I mean, he was the Hulk Hogan of Mexico, and really uh, moved the needle. But I mean, when you're looking at Vampiro, right? Obviously, his exploits in WCW, and then never went to the WWE, but XPW here in SoCal. He was a part of that, and then you go into Pro Wrestling Society X, right? And then years later in Lucha Underground, I think one of the best matches that I feel that um, uh, Pentagon Jr. ever had was that match against Vampiro in Lucha Underground. And I think my fandom kind of tanked a little bit uh, because of it. Because after that, the storytelling was just amazing, absolutely exquisite. And, everything else just seemed like whatever. And there's no disrespect to, the wrestlers that wrestled after that, but I was just like, it peaked there, right? But look at everybody that, Lucha Underground has produced, or Pro Wrestling Society X has produced, right? And Vampiro was a major part of both promotions, right? You wouldn't get, Ricochet on a large scale if not for that. You wouldn't get, um, I guess, I mean, I'm always gonna call him Macias, right? Ricky Banderas. Without those two promotions, Pro Wrestling Society X and Lucha Underground. I mean, again, you he basically set off waves in both Mexico and AAA, where he was the first mega champion, and then everybody that came from Lucha Underground, right? And then Negro Casas. Negro Casas was instrumental in, Chris Jericho, Lionheart Chris Jericho. He was essentially the one that helped Chris Jericho kind of adapt to the Mexican style, and especially with I mean, he's I believe, second generation wrestler himself, and all of his brothers wrestle as well. But it's amazing because he was almost like the Dean Malenko in Mexico, but homegrown, where all the luchas would spot, whatever. But he was like, yes, he could do all the spot stuff, but I mean, he was technical. He was so crisp,
Very.
and I mean, he just retired not too long ago. If not, he might even be doing a show, here and there. But I mean, Nigger Casas, oh my goodness, he's so brilliant. I don't think he gets his just due, And then, in terms of Norman Smiley, I mean, Black Magic, his run in Mexico is I mean, unparalleled to a lot of people, a lot of foreign fighters, in Mexico and Japan, right? And then what he ended up doing in WCW, and it's no reason why that you have to think too hard why he's one of the main coaches at the WWE Performance Center. So again, you've got those three that Fernando just mentioned, right? Those are the pillars of today pro wrestling. Because if not for Vampiro, Negro Casas, and Norman Smiley, you wouldn't get the AEWs, you wouldn't get the next crop of WWE superstars, and then everybody in the independent scene with Vampiro. So I think it's kind of fun that he mentioned those.
Yeah. So yeah, to add to the Arthur Bar and Eddie Guerrero's type of thing, I don't know if you remember. Quote me if I'm wrong. If I mess up the year, do you remember the match between Arthur Bar, Eddie Guerrero, and El Santo and Octagon in the sports arena? when it was hair versus mask.
Fernando actually just mentioned it. There you go. He just mentioned it. It's funny. You guys should connect sometime soon because if you haven't already done so, because I think you guys have similar minds. But yeah, I mean that when Worlds Collide pay per view in '96, I mean that was the first Lucha Libre only like exclusive pay per view. And yes, he had American talent sprinkled in there, but I mean that that Art Bar, Eddie Guerrero, Los Gringos Locos versus El Santo Jr. and Octagon. Man, that was amazing.
Let me tell you this: I was there.
You were?
Yeah, I was there, and I never heard the crowd so wild. I was there, and it was it was amazing. I was living. I was like, what are these guys doing? I remember when I don't remember a spot in the match, but there was a spot in the match where Octagon got a tombstone power driver,
Yeah, yeah.
and he
Which is
got,
banned in Mexico.
yeah, which is banned in Mexico, and he couldn't move. I was crying, and I was telling my mom, "What's wrong with him? He can't move. Now El Santos by himself." I was crying. Mom's like, "He's gonna be all right."
Man, that's I mean it's something that you could still watch today, and it's so fun. It's just so fun. And again, if not for when Worlds Collide, you wouldn't have gotten again Eddie Guerrero coming. I mean, I think Eddie would have made it, but he wouldn't. Not to say that he wouldn't have done it as fast, but I mean that was a major reason why Eddie Guerrero or Rey Mysterio Jr. and Psicosis, they ended up getting WCW contracts after that because it was just like you know that everybody saw the talent, and it, especially now, right? In retrospect, you don't really appreciate it because obviously, Rey Mysterio, Psicosis, Juventud Guerrera, uh, Eddie Guerrero, those are all legends now. But to look at pro wrestling as it was then, it was a very, especially in North America, it was a big man territory where you had Hogan and The Rock and like all of those guys. I mean, obviously, when Worlds Collide happened in '94, it happened in '94, but it was a very much big man territory. I think that '94 was like the first run of Bret Hart, and even Bret Hart had a hard time his first kind of run with the WWF title. He had a tough run because most people thought of him as a smaller guy, despite the fact that he was over 6 feet tall, not by much, but still, So to see those talents that are even shorter than Bret Hart and Owen Hart, respectively, and they get it the whole pay per view, and these fabulous performers, and the personas. It was like, I mean, it was if you were an American fan tuning into that pay per view, my goodness, I mean, it was like your cherry got popped, and it was like, what? Like I've been missing this my entire life. What am I doing?
One of the biggest pops I've been a part of. Like every match, people were screaming, every match, and it's like the energy, the energy. I think that's what drawn me into lucha libre, and then part of it because my mom would tell me stories of my uncle, like I mentioned, my uncle Felix Jr. Uh, she would tell me stories how she would go with him to the arenas and things like that. So I think that's what drawn me even more to pro wrestling.
I think it's amazing. That's amazing. And again, I mean, I could only imagine you as a young kid, and seeing those larger than life personas and going like, man, like that. They're almost my spirit, wrestlers, not animals, but spirit wrestlers. They're me to an extent. Man, when I was growing up, I was fat, had a stutter, and didn't have a lot of self confidence, man. And I remember Uh, just walking to school, I remember the first time I saw Dean Malenko and him going like this, and just, I mean, the man of a thousand holds, and I was always drawn to the technical wrestlers anyway, all right? And I was just like, damn, dude, that dude is legit. And, to kind of gain confidence and what have you, I would walk to school and walk around school much like Dean Malenko, and that's how I got my confidence through it. So I can only imagine what you must have been feeling, um, seeing these again larger than life personas.
No, and then on top of that, it's like, growing up with cerebral palsy. You're a very shy kid coming up. At the time when you start going to school, uh, English is my second language. Spanish is my first language. So imagine not speaking a word of English and then not having friends. So my escape has always been wrestling and music. So yeah, every time I go to a wrestling show, it's like I could be me there when the rest of the world I cannot be me. Uh, yeah,
No, I love it, and I, I'm the same way. Although, I mean, the first time I was kind of well into elementary school, the first time that I saw pro wrestling, I think you even uh, predated me in terms of your live wrestling experience or lucha libre experience going to When Worlds Collide. But I mean, I wasn't until probably about 95, 96 that I went to like an indie uh pro wrestling show. And when you're a kid, you don't know indie versus whatever, but I mean, there was like Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Sabu and let's see, my goodness, like Rob Van Dam, like he was like right in between his stints of WCW as Rob AV and going to ECW. But I remember his merch table. He had this um, desktop calendar with him kind of posing split legged, and he's holding like weights. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. He was splits with a chair, like he was doing splits on a chair, and he's got
yeah,
this heavy ass weight in between it. And I was just like, oh man, and it was just like, even then, I to me, all of those guys, like Virgil, Iron Sheik, um, and despite the fact that Virgil hit on my mom that night, screw you, Virgil. Boo, boo, Virgil. That dude will always be a rudo to me. But no, I mean, those are guys that I saw on WWE and or WWF and WCW. I didn't know that they weren't there or whatever, and I just remember just being in awe. I mean, remember this happened at the Silver Nugget Casino in Vegas, and I was like, I was waiting in line with my sister and my parents, and I feel this like push to the ground, and I fell on my ass, right? I probably was maybe about 7 or 8, right? And I happened to look up, and it's Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And I was just like, oh my gosh! And he was, I mean, he was in his gear, right? But I just happened to be standing in front of those old, cigarette dispensers that you pull and you put your money in, pull the lever, and get your cigarettes out. And he wanted his Newports, man. He wanted his cigarettes before the show, and I just happened to be whatever. And I mean, I just his stomach, man. Like that dude was solid. He knocked me on my ass. I thought like, I don't know, Jesus was coming. I was like, the end is near. He just knocked me, and I fucking took a bump on my ass. Like it was crazy. But I mean, those are some fond memories, growing up. And I'm sure, especially raised in lucha, that your mom, was kind of the jumping off point to your fandom yourself. I mean, and to be able to experience it live in your youth, that's got to be pretty cool.
it was pretty cool. I mean, yeah, when AAA was founded, AAA was founded in '92, I believe. Call me if
Mm-hmm.
I'm so around '94, '95, they start coming to Los Angeles. So my mom would take me to those shows. So I got to watch Vampiro joined the company, I believe, in '97. So all to the all the '90s, I went to the AAA shows when they would come to the sports arena. So I got to watch Conan versus El Perro Aguayo, that cage match, and I got to see that match. And I remember Conan was bleeding, and my mom was going like this to my face. Mom was like, and I was going, I was going. Let me see. I want. No, it's because it's blood. But you could smell the blood from where I was sitting. You could smell the blood, and this dude was pouring in blood. And I was like, "What the heck am I watching?" It's the first time that I saw blood, and I was like, "Wow." And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mexican wrestling. You're allowed after a show to do a meet and greet. So I would go and do meet and greets, and I met these guys. And yeah, being a 4-year-old kid, 5-year-old kid, those were like my real life superheroes, like my Spider Man, my Batman.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Pero Aguayo, and obviously, most wrestling fans know that name by actually his son El Hijo Pero Aguayo. But I mean, man, I mean his Pero, right? That's dog in Spanish, dog Aguayo. That was almost like a bloodier version of what we saw, with Rick Steiner being the dog faced gremlin, and Rick Steiner, he was technical. Pero was, I mean, not to say that he wasn't technical, but you saw blood and guts when you saw a Puerto Aguayo senior match, and you saw a bit of it out of junior as well, you know. But it's just, yeah, I mean, those are fantastic matches, even still today, that still, stand the test of time. And I can only imagine what it must be like as a kid, watching that.
Yeah, it was. It's something that you don't understand, but as you get older, you're like, okay, is this real? Is this fake? What is this? What am I watching? But you get it as you get older. Okay, it's a wrestling. It's a real sport. Whatever. And I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, I was just amazed, and I think I got more hooked to in that wrestling aspect. I think even that day, I got more hooked. I wanted to know what was the what how was their rivalry gonna play out because they had a cage match, they had multiple matches, and I kept up with the rivalry, and it's like, wow, wow, wow.
Now, now, as an adult now, have you gone back and watched that match and kind of see it with like adult eyes?
I have, I have, and I enjoy it. Like I picture myself in the arena when I was 5 years old, 4 years old.
I think that's brilliant. That's so brilliant. And the fact that you have those memories, But I mean, we talked a lot about the your influences, but um, what are the stuff that kind of interests you today? What whether it be pro wrestling, lucha libre, what are some of the things that interest you today? What are you watching?
I mean, right now it's a little bit of everything, a little bit of WWF, WWE, a little bit of AEW, a little bit of the independent scene, which I want to give credit where credit is due. The reason that I started doing these interviews, it was because of you. It was because of you, and from encouragement from you, and encouragement from my friend Mercurio Jr. And yeah, the you guys are part of the reason that I started doing what I set out to do. And yeah, like you guys turned me on to like the independent scene. I discovered the independent scene again. I thought that lucha libre, pro wrestling, was only on TV, but I discovered a world of independence.
That's amazing. And thank you for your kind words. That's thank you. But I mean, and that's what we're doing. It's just helping each other achieve our dreams. And I mean, having a platform to kind of, like, hey, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world, and there has always been. It's not just been 2020. There's always been craziness, but like, okay, how about let me show you some stuff that I like, and maybe you'll like it too, and maybe we'll find this world and this the struggle to deal with life a little bit easier by watching said things or listening to said things, and kind of injecting positivity into a particular situation. So that's it. And my goodness. So uh, going going to the live events, right? And seeing kind of like the indie talent. Who are some of your faves?
I mean, I you can go to my channel and check out this tag team by the name of Kiss Junior, Kiss Tercero. I seen Ray Leon. Ray Leon is pretty good. Uh, this other tag team named Los Commandos. I mean, there's a lot that I might miss. Eli Everfly. Uh, you name it.
Yeah, man. Oh, the Eli Everfly. I mean, one half of Doomfly with Delilah Doom, and I mean, obviously pre COVID. I mean, they were tearing up the scene. Eli had this match, I believe, in New Orleans. During WrestleMania weekend that year, or whatever the last WrestleMania was in New Orleans, and I mean, he jumped off of something, because I mean that's what, if you get in an Eli Everfly match, that's chances are that's what's going to happen. What's the highest peak, and he's probably going to jump off of that at some point during the night. But yeah, he's kind of incredible, and in terms of kind of spanning the lucha and integrating pro wrestling. That dude, I mean, I've seen him wrestle technical matches. I've seen him and Delilah both wrestle technical matches. And there aren't too many high spots, and then I've seen them just like is spot, spot, spot. But the thing about it, it all had meaning. They told a story. It wasn't just like spot, spot, spot to do it. It was like everything had meaning. And not to say that that doesn't happen, but you see it less and less, and that was one of the reasons, prior to COVID, that Eli became one of the head trainers at Santino Brothers, right? That obviously ushered in people to the WWE and AEW, and I mean literally every promotion that is running today has a sprinkling of Santino Brothers talents or trainers there, right? So um, it's his mind for the business, and I think once everything kind of returns to normal, you'll see Eli on much bigger stages. So it's kind of awesome that we were able to see him, kind of in his formative years, because he's an incredible talent.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, I saw him at an indie show before COVID, before this whole entire thing, and it was like I seen him in previous shows. I saw him in an Okidojo because I got invited through Mercurio Jr., who's a good friend of mine. And I watched him there because he made an appearance there, and I was like, this kid, even though he's not tall, he's not, you know, he doesn't have big stature, but the things that he does are just amazing. Credit to that guy. Shout out to Eli Everfly, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better than myself. In terms of the persona, he's larger than life. Um, which I mean, if I, okay, I'm gonna throw this out there, right? But in terms of if you had to start a pro wrestling lucha libre, company yourself, and you had 10, 10 talents that you could acquire, I mean, everyone, WWE, AEW, Independence, AAA, whatever. Who would those 10 wrestlers be?
That's a hard question to answer, man. I really could not answer. I really could not answer which one, but I would probably go with the top talent, whoever stands out for my eye. If like they do something amazing, I could probably be part of my business. I would definitely sign El Negro Casa due to the technical stature. Fuerza Guerrera, even though these guys are already old legends, like you said, but I would still want them so they could mentor the next generation. Fuerza Guerrera, Juventud Guerrera, all those guys that you can think of. Yeah, Eli, obviously Eli, uh, Kiss Jr., Kiss Tercero, the Commandos, Mercurio Jr. would be the first one in my list, maybe. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. And it speaks to, again, your love of lucha, because a lot of the names that you mentioned were lucha. So I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, in terms of the you creating music, right? I How did you get into that? Because I mean, linearly, it doesn't look like music and pro wrestling or lucha libre would go together. But I mean, you're just as passionate about your music as you are, your love for all things, kind of combat sports. So, when did wanting to produce music enter your life, and who were your influences?
I mean, once again, I'm gonna go back. It's like it started as a young age as the pro wrestling thing. It started at the same time because I remember my mom would play all kinds of music from the 80s, 70s, early 90s, from hip hop to Spanish music to everything that you can think of. And due to the fact that I remember my mom, she would notice that we would go to a store, any electronic store, right? And I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, electronic stores used to sell instruments. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Call me if I'm wrong. If so, we would walk into the store, and I would tell her, "Can I go over there?" Because I just wanted to play with the instruments. I just wanted to bang the drum. I just wanted to strum the guitar, even though I couldn't strum because I don't have finger dexterity. I wanted to touch the freaking drum, and yeah, that's how it started. And my mom bought me a little drum set, a little toy drum set, so I would pretend that I would play. And then she bought me a toy guitar, and I pretended even though that I didn't have finger dexterity, but I used to go like this, and I would say, "Oh, I'm playing." Yeah.
Oh man. And shout out to your mom. I've met her in person, and I mean, your parents are some incredible people. And the fact that they've been pretty much your number one fans, and figured out a way to, your to make what would normally people would view as a disability really into your superpower. Because I mean, I don't know, and I think about this myself, right? If certain instances hadn't happened, would I be doing what I am doing today, right? And those circumstances at the moment may be negative, right? But I mean, what would be the course of action if you hadn't had cerebral palsy, right? And you probably wouldn't have the time in between doctor visits and your mom's love and really being able, most kids, they're not into what their parents are into, today or any other time in history, right? So you have that time to kind of sit there with your mom and watch these incredible figures in life, and you're like, it set you into the next phase of your life where you're interviewing these luchadors and pro wrestlers, and you're creating music yourself. And again, you fight so much harder because you don't have that finger dexterity to pick up a guitar, or it hurts to play drums, kind of the rhythm of such things. But you found a way to kind of use what you have as again a superpower, and figured out a way to make the music, it literally and figuratively, in your life the way that you want it.
No, and shout out to my editor and my co-producer Lou Dog, Hopefully he's watching. God bless you, brother. Um, yeah, I met Lou Dog in the year probably 2011, 2012, 2013. I don't remember the years. Sorry if I mess up the years. But yeah, he was my case manager in an agency that I got involved because I belong to the regional center. So I got thrown into that agency because they didn't know what to do with me. I got thrown in. You know, they offer you services in regional center, and they tell you go here just to stay active. So I met Lou Dog there. He was my case manager, and we are the best of friends now. And we started working together. And shout out to him. God bless him. You know.
No, absolutely, and shout out to those influences because I mean I think about with your story. I feel even though it's a little bit different, it's a little bit almost like Rick Allen from Def Leppard, right? Where he has this car crash, right? He's the drummer of Def Leppard, and they are literally on a wave, and they've taken America by storm, right? And he has this, car crash. I mean, catastrophic crash, and it cuts off his arm, right? And he makes that solemn vow to himself and his bandmates that he's going to return back, right? And that crash happened, my goodness, like in the 80s, right? And he's still their drummer because he figured out a way to play drums without, I mean, just one-handed drummer, and you know, he's essentially given life to organizations in places um, like war-torn countries, like Bosnia, Sarajevo, parts of Africa that people were negatively affected by landmines and stuff over the civil wars of those particular countries, and he's basically taught men, women, and children that may not have all of their limbs how to basically contribute to their community in a musical way despite their physical limitations.
Yeah, I don't play any instruments currently right now. What I do, I just hum the beat out. Like if I have a melody in my head, I hum it out in my phone, and then I send it to Lou Dog, and then Lou Dog is like, "Let me work on this," and then I'll add the other instruments, and that's how I create. Because I cannot play. Unfortunately, I cannot play. I don't know how to work computer software, and he does. So, like you said, I used a negative to a positive. You know, I found a way.
No, oh, go ahead.
I found a way, like you said, to to create.
That you did, and I mean it's both ways, the YouTube channel and your musical endeavors, and I salute you for it. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff, health stuff, financial stuff, loss of jobs, and what have you. Being somebody that has gone through certain stripes in your life, right? um what message do you have for everyone that is going through some sort of hardship, to kind of get over it?
I mean, just surround yourself with the right people. Just surround yourself with the right people. The people that are gonna have the best interest in heart. Because a lot of people might tell you, yeah, we want the best for you, but you really have to read them. I have gotten screwed many a times. I have gotten screwed up different things, but you learn as you grow. And the best thing that I could tell you is that make the best of what you can get. Don't complain. Be patient, and everything will come.
I love it, man. And again, there's so many people that are going through so much, and I think any sort of light, right? Any canary in the coal mine, so to speak, when everything is dark, for you and us all to kind of find the light in each other and bring it out, and go on to whatever the next endeavor of life so choose to have for us.
Yeah, I mean, You know me personally, and it was funny how I met Adam. I gotta tell the story. I met Adam at a boxing gym because I was going through a rough period. I mean, I was really depressed. I was like, what am I gonna do now? Because I remember I even tried to attempt commit suicide. When I met you, I tried to commit suicide. 2 days after, 2 days
Wow.
2 days before actually I met you, and my mom, my mom told me my mom was very desperate because I was very depressed. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do anything with the world. So my mom told me, you told me the other day that talking to her, you told me the other day that you have friends that own a boxing gym. How come you don't go and just socialize with people? And that's how I met you. You could tell them the story if you want.
Yeah, and it was I didn't know that, you know, in that time, but I at the time I was actually doing promo videos, right? Myself along with Bosun Wang were doing promo videos, and we were at that point we had been in talks with Combate Americas because we had done some for like Eric Ghost Pepper Gonzalez and like Froggy Estrada, people like that. And that day we were actually there for Anthony Hernandez. Who, funny enough, I mean, right now he's literally kind of touring the United States as a part of like a specialty COVID team, right?
Shout
So he's
out
going
to
into hospitals and what have you. But at the time, you know, Anthony was fighting, and he was actually out of the gym both Bosun and I trained at the time, Fight Academy in Pasadena, and we were like, oh, you've got to fight. We'll do a promo video, and we went to the CNC stables out in Alhambra, and this dude um, was he reminded me of myself. And I don't know if I've told you this, you know, prior to this, but I mean, I remember anytime that I was around anybody that was involved in any sort of combat sports, I would just like, I probably annoyed them, and you didn't annoy me at all. But you know, I wanted to know this and that and how things work and all this and what do you do and all of this stuff. And I remember like your spirit during that time, I would have never known what you had gone through because like you were so full of life and so full of, you know, questions, and you know, you were inquisitive, and you didn't have bad questions, you know. And this is even before I had a podcast, right? And it was from that day where I was just like, man, everybody's got a story, and I just want to figure out, you know, how to be able to get that out of them, and be able to record it, because you know it's those stories that you can kind of point to as the jumping off point for what they ended up becoming, right? And again, you reminded me so much of me that day that I was just like, man, I want to get to know this guy. And that was, I mean, almost 4 years ago. I mean, that was the very beginning of my career. I wasn't even doing interviews. I wasn't in front of the camera. The stuff that we were doing in promo, I was doing the social media and everything like that. And everything that you saw in front of the camera or was Bosun, right? And I'm still trying to figure out my way. But you seemed a little bit more, especially on that day, a little bit more further in your life journey than I had. You know, I took a, you know, it took me another couple of years to figure out doing this. But I mean, you were so sure. And again, that's a testament to your inner strength, because I never would have known what you had been going through, you know, days and weeks prior. But I'm so glad. I'm so glad that not only you're still here, but you're being able to contribute what I feel is your life's work. And we're able to kind of see it happen in real time.
And it's funny. I was sitting down, and I remember you were just sitting next to me, and you were just looking at me. You kind of didn't want to talk to me, and then you opened the dialogue, and I saw that you told me that you like pro wrestling as well, and what the thing that drawn me to you is that I remember I told you that I like pro wrestling and lucha libre, and then I told you I have a family member that does this for a living in Mexico. And I remember I told you my uncle's name, and what took me back was like you actually saw my uncle wrestle Dominic Jr., and I was like, how the hell did Adam saw my uncle wrestle if I never seen him wrestle? I seen him training, but I never seen him wrestle.
Yeah, and again, it's what you love, right? My dad taught me when I was young. You find out what you love, and then the sometimes the harder part is figuring out a way to get paid for it, right? To make sure that you get to do it for as long as you like, and again, it's so crazy because I was just I think we even like talked for a whole hour after we had done filming. Like we had packed up all the stuff and everything, and it was just you and I just talking in the lobby of the gym, and we talked for probably about another hour until your ride came, and those are some of the funnest conversations because again, like when I get like super geeky about my you know kind of love for all things combat sports, whether that be pro wrestling, Muay Thai, whatever. There aren't too many people that either, people kind of swap me away. They're just like, that's cool, bro. I kind of watched Stone Cold Steve Austin, but like, do your thing or whatever. They kind of shoo me away. But we sat for a whole hour just talking about pro wrestling after we had been done shooting, and it was fun, and I knew at that point I met a lifelong friend, so I just appreciate you and your friendship, and you mean the world to me, my man.
Thank you. You mean the world to me too, man. Thank you for inspiring me. And I remember when you met my mom, she told you, "Thank you for having a friend like you." I don't know if you remember
Yep.
when yeah.
Yeah, and again, a shout out to your family, your wonderful family that I've been able to meet up close and personal, and you guys are absolutely fantastic. But for those who haven't already done so, right? They haven't found the enigma, the living enigma that is Jass Beats, right? Where can they find you on social media and otherwise, my man?
They can find me on YouTube as Jass Beats, like it says right here, my name right here. And then they could find me also on Twitter, on all social media like this, except for my Instagram. My Instagram is El Has Beats, and yeah, I mean I'm down to interview anybody, DM me, message me, whatever you want to do. If it's an interview, not music, but if it's an interview, music is gonna take a while. But if you want to do an interview, just DM me. Any wrestler, indie, major wrestler, up and starting, it doesn't matter. I just want to create a platform where people could come in and talk to me about pro wrestling and music.
Well, I followed him and I'm subscribed to his YouTube channel, and I warmly encourage you all to do the exact same. And you can thank me later for making that recommendation because what he's doing is absolutely great. Dude, Yaz, I mean, it's been an honor and a privilege to talk to you, especially in this form, and I can't wait to see what the next endeavor for you is going to be. That next video, that next uh, potentially producing of music. I cannot wait.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I could come back and do another one.
Dang right. And thank you guys for watching us here at A Quarter in the Woods. And I usually ask people to like, share, and subscribe, but I've got somebody to help me out with that. So let's get to that.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods YouTube.